God, Country, Notre Dame. Not just a lofty motto etched in stone at the Basilica, a Notre Dame tradition of military service that runs deep. From Father Corby's chaplain duties in the Civil War, to the Navy taking over the campus in World War II for officers' training. Many sons and daughters of Notre Dame have and continue to serve around the globe. 2 years ago, Captain Eric Goins was serving with his Army unit in Poland and Slovakia, supporting Ukraine's military efforts. Now he's playing for Notre Dame's Special Teams unit as a 30-year-old walk-on place kicker while working on his MBA at the Mendoza College of Business. One of dozens of veterans each year whose Notre Dame experience is coming after their military service, Eric Goins shares with us his unique perspective on God, Country, Notre Dame.
One of the things I said is like, oh, I have to do volunteer work now. I always viewed my job as service, my profession in the Army. But now that I'm not serving, what can I do to get out there to continue to give back?
I'm correspondent and former Marine Captain Mike Cerre, class of '69, for this Veterans Day edition of God, Country, Notre Dame. Welcome to God, Country, Notre Dame, and welcome Captain Eric Goins.
Thank you.
Did you ever think you'd be on a college campus, considering where you were last year?
No, I don't think I could say that I had this in mind at all, especially sitting in this chair right now in this
Where
format.
were you sitting a year ago?
About a year ago, I would have still been traveling back and forth between either Germany, Poland, or Slovakia. I had just finished up pretty much the 12-month that then got extended a little bit longer deployment initially to Poland to defend the resupply effort and aid effort for
the Ukraine war.
Correct, yes, sir.
So you're right in the game here.
For a little bit, yes. Yeah.
Okay. What prompted the decision to go back to school, to end your military career and go back to school?
It was a progression over time. I started off as an infantry officer. I did that for 4 years, and then at the 4-year mark, you either go to the captain's career course. So I went to the signal captain's career course, or I had fulfilled my service obligation because I was a non-scholarship cadet. So I had completed my 3 years. So that was my first decision point was, do I want to continue to serve or I can leave then? I felt like I still hadn't quite achieved what I wanted to. I wanted to do something more than just train, essentially. Not that training's not important, but I felt like I hadn't done what I'd set out to do, which was to really serve our country. So I felt like I had some more to give. So I decided to go the career course. And that's what ultimately led me getting stationed in Germany. I was a Signal Corps officer there. I was a battalion S6, so a battalion communications officer in support of a air defense artillery battalion. So air defense in Europe has become and still is a very important thing that not many people would have thought when I first got there in 2020.
But the transition, was it more to go back to university for academic reasons or to go back and play football?
It was academic. Getting sent to Germany, I always had in the back of my mind, if you get stationed overseas, you incur a 3-year additional duty service obligation. So that kind of put the dream fully to rest, or so I thought, because I thought, oh, I'm going to be 30 by the time I'm done if I do leave then, and that's just not very realistic. But if you move within the United States, you only owe 1 year after the career course. So I thought, oh, I can do Signal Corps for a year, I can see how it is, and then if I don't like it, then I can consider going to school again. But then once I got assigned to Germany, the decision was made for me, essentially.
But what about the matriculation to Notre Dame? Was it matriculating through the academic department or through the football program?
It was academics. I had in mind where I wanted to go to school, actually through the Army, through the West Point professor program. I applied to teach as a professor there. And while I was applying to that program, I made the list of what schools I would want to go to because you had to tell them where you would want to go. And so Notre Dame was one of those schools for me. So I also decided, separate of that application, just to apply as a civilian to Notre Dame should I not get that West Point position, which is what ended up happening. So then, again, the decision was kind of made for me. I was ready to go back to school. I enjoy being a student. I was ready to learn something new.
Were you ready to go back and play football?
At the time, no, I still didn't think it was possible because of what I was doing for that deployment, I had throughout my time in the Army just gone and kicked footballs for fun, just something to do when you're good at something. It's kind of like you could go out and play golf or you could go kick a football. So for me, sometimes it was just going out to kick a football like that.
And in your career, did anything happen in your career that you thought, well, football's definitely out now. I'll never be able to play football again?
Not definitely out, but there's definitely some times where I didn't even do anything other than just Army training for a while. I was in Ranger school for a total of 9 months before I finally graduated, because that included 2 separate stints in the school. The first time I was medically dropped in the final Florida swamps phase, about 4 days from graduating.
What was your medical injury?
That one, I had cellulitis and impetigo on my forearms, and it was a heat casualty. We did a movement after a rainstorm. You have to stop movement and when the rainstorm happens, thunderstorm. So you either sleep in a trash bag or your poncho, and then you either poncho or trash bag your ruck. So I woke up in direct sunlight, sleeping in a trash bag. So I woke up overheated, and then we did like a 4-mile running movement to make up for time. So we made it. I made it to where we were about to do a boat movement, and I had to go see the medics because I wasn't quite there.
Army airborne and Ranger training is rigorous. Everyone knows that. How does it compare to training for Notre Dame football?
There's a lot of similarities in the mindset that you have to use going into the training. A lot of the things that I would refer back to in the Army is, if everyone else is doing it around me, then why can't I? And if everyone else has done this before me, like I had friends that had graduated Ranger school before I went. So I would think, oh, if he graduated, then why can't I? I know him. Like, he's not any tougher or better than me. So I still have that same kind of like chip on my shoulder now, to where I'm like, if they can realistically expect us to do this, they have a lot of smart people, great performance staff here. If they say physically it's possible for someone to do it, then there should be no reason why I can't do it then.
Have any of your football colleagues asked you about, is this tougher than Ranger school or airborne?
Definitely when we first started out, and I got those questions a lot, like, how does this compare to the Army so far? But it was great because they had just finished the season 2 weeks before playing, and I hadn't really been working out in a professional manner like we have been here. And so it was great for me too, because I needed to get eased back into everything. So it worked well to our favor, both the returning players and the incoming players like myself.
What's the connection, or let's say the similarity, between a unit integrity and an athletic team? Do you feel like you're right at home, that you haven't missed a step? You've been away from the game for a while, but that teamwork, is that still pretty much inherent in what you're all about?
It is. Yeah, you have to trust whatever. So for me, as a punter and kicker, you have to trust your long snapper, the guy who's going to get you the ball. So it's the same thing in the military. There's only so much you can control. There's only so many things that I know how to do, but I know the guy to my right and left, or the girl to my right and left, they have that knowledge and ability. So you have to lean on them for that. So it's very much the same thing there. And also with like the age difference, it's 18 to 22-year-olds. So it's like working with junior.
What's your music playlist compared to their music playlist? Is it a little bit different?
Right, about 10 years off and everything. There'll be songs that'll come on. I'll say like, oh, I remember this song came out freshman year of high school. And then they'll be like, oh yeah, I was 2 years old when this song came out. So it's been funny to hear
What
stuff
about
like
the
that.
transition to the business school? There are people more of your age. Are there other military veterans in the business program?
There's about 10% of the class of a little over 100. So 12, 13 of military veterans. We have a military veterans club within the MBA program of both the first and second year MBA students. So about every 2 to 3 weeks, we get together and just have a little time to, one, go over networking opportunities and upcoming events, and then also just to share some of our experiences and stories. And then we also do service throughout the community. We've done different events that I've been able to go to, which has been pretty impactful, because one of the things I said is like, oh, I have to do volunteer work now. I always viewed my job as service, my profession in the Army. But now that I'm not serving, what can I do to get out there to continue to give back? So that's been a great way for all of us to do that.
Now, I can imagine the transition back to football after a 7-year gap is difficult, but I would also imagine a 7-year gap of being in the classroom and the rigors of academia. Is that almost in a way more difficult of a transition than going back to football?
No, because I enjoy being a student. So it was great. I showed up here in the fall, not with a football program yet. So I was able to fully focus on being a student, just getting reacquainted with being out of the military and then returning to school. I've always enjoyed learning. So it was great to get back and have something pretty much immediately to apply myself to again, because I flew home on a Thursday, drove to South Bend on a Saturday, and then orientation started that Tuesday. And that flying home was from Germany. So it was also kind of getting used to America again all at the same time. So there's a lot of changes all happening nearly simultaneously for me, but it was probably for the best because it gave me something to do.
Eric, I understand you have a rich military tradition within your family. Can you tell me about that?
Sure, both my mom and dad, both of their fathers served. My dad's dad in the Army, and then my mother's dad in the Navy. So skipped a generation. I think that's a common saying, like military service skips a generation. So none of my aunts and uncles or my parents served, but then they have a bunch of children, including myself, that have. So on my mom's side, I have 11 cousins, including me, and 5 of us have served or are still continuing to serve. So we don't have all the branches represented, but we have the Army, Navy, Marine Corps represented amongst
And
us.
you're also going to have the chaplain corps represented as well, right?
Correct. My older brother, he graduated from West Point in 2014. He was a field artillery officer and then entered the Army Reserve in order to go to the seminary. He's currently in his deacon year at Mount St. Mary's in Maryland. So he was just ordained as a deacon 2 weeks ago. He'll be, assuming things will go well and continue to go well, which they will, I'm sure. He'll be ordained as a priest next year around this time, and he'll be a priest for Arlington. He'll do that for 3 years and then be a chaplain in the Army for however long the Army says they want him and need him. And he's willing and ready and able to do that. And then he'll return to Arlington.
Now, Notre Dame is not a military school like you attended originally, the Citadel. But do you find any correlation between the two?
Yes, they're both founded in 1842. That was one of the first striking similarities when I first got here, learning that date. But there's much more than that, just that surface
I mean,
level.
there's no
Yeah.
uniforms other than the ROTC,
Yeah.
but is that tradition, the camaraderie, the kind of service, selflessness, or working for something bigger than yourself, do you feel that here at Notre Dame? Like you
Definitely.
did?
At some point as a kid, like you become aware of a lot of things, and Notre Dame was one of those things, probably through football. But so with that, God Country Notre Dame, like I knew that saying well before thinking of coming here. So that kind of ethos and that guiding principles of the school, you can definitely see. You see it on the words of the basilica, but the support that the veterans have here is really excellent. We really feel like there's a community here through the NBA Veterans Club that we have. We do a lot of events through that. And just really from other students as well. Early on during orientation week, had a fellow classmate come up and say, like, yeah, every time one of you guys talk, like you can tell just everyone is listening to what you have to say. So there's a respect and appreciation from not only like the faculty and administration, but also our peers, our fellow classmates. So that's been really awesome.
So what happens when Notre Dame plays Army and Navy? What are the loyalties?
So that was Coach Freeman said the first team meeting we had. No matter where you came from, you know you're the Notre Dame Fighting Irish now. So that's obviously where I am. I can't wait to play those programs. I know my brother, he'll be rooting for me, even though he went to West Point. But it'll just be really cool to have those experiences.
What do you do personally on Veterans Day? Growing up as a kid, being in the military, now being out of the military, is there anything that's kind of symbolic to what you do on Veterans Day?
Not necessarily. Both of my grandfathers, I would say, were definitely more of they were not the silent patriots, but they were very proud of their military service. But that wasn't like they made a show of it or wanted to call attention to themselves in that regard. So I guess it's kind of been more so a national event more so than really at the family level.
Let's talk about your
Yeah.
teammates. Do you think your teammates will have maybe a better appreciation for Veterans Day, having met you and knowing a little bit about your background? Do you think it will kind of raise their awareness about what the day is all about?
Sure, it could. I hope so. That's the goal. I said one of the goals I wanted to have was to share my experiences and influence, so then that way I can better those around me. So if that can be one of the things that they take away, that'd be great. But yeah, just showing by example what I've taken from my military service, that would hopefully be the most striking thing that I can leave here having done and said I would do.
Eric Goins, thank you for your service, first of all, and thank you for sharing your reflections on Veterans Day here at Notre Dame.
Thank you.
I'm correspondent and former Marine Captain Mike Cerre, class of '69, for this Veterans Day edition of God, Country, Notre Dame.